Here's something nobody told you. Every time a farmer anywhere in the world plants a crop, whether it's corn in Iowa, wheat in Ukraine, rice in India, or cotton in Brazil, there's a very good chance they didn't choose their seeds. They were chosen for them. 4 companies decide what grows on most of the world's farmland. 4 companies control 56% of all commercial seeds on Earth. And the wild part? Most people have never heard of 3 of them. This is the story of how 4 corporations quietly took control of the world's food supply, and what happens if something goes wrong. For 10,000 years, farming worked the same way everywhere on Earth. You plant a crop, you harvest it, you save the best seeds, you plant them again next year. That's it. That was the entire system. It worked across empires, famines, ice ages, and revolutions. Farmers owned their seeds. Nobody could take that from them. Then, in the second half of the 20th century, something changed. First came hybrid seeds, engineered to produce massive yields, but sterile. Save a hybrid seed and replant it, and you get a weak, unpredictable crop. To get the good yield again, you have to go back to the company and buy new seeds every single year. Then came genetic modification. Seeds re-engineered at the DNA level, resistant to pests, tolerant to herbicides, designed for industrial scale. And then came something even more powerful than the science: the patents. In 1980, a U.S. Supreme Court ruling opened the door to patenting living organisms. By the 1990s, corporations had patented seed varieties, and suddenly, for the first time in 10,000 years, a seed could be owned, not by a farmer, by a company. What happened next was a feeding frenzy. Over the next 3 decades, hundreds of regional seed companies were bought, merged, absorbed, or driven out of business. Small became medium, medium became large, large became enormous. By 2018, the dust had settled, and 4 names were left standing. Bayer, the German pharmaceutical giant that bought Monsanto, the most controversial agricultural company in history, for $63 billion. That acquisition gave Bayer 23% of the entire global seed market, almost a quarter of all commercial seeds on Earth controlled by one company, Corteva. Formed from the merger of Dow Chemical and DuPont, 2 of the biggest chemical companies in American history. They combined their agricultural divisions and spun off a company that now holds 19% of the global seed market, BASF. The German chemical giant that quietly picked up Bayer's discarded seed assets when regulators forced Bayer to sell some holdings as a condition of buying Monsanto. BASF barely makes headlines, but it controls a significant slice of the world's pesticide supply alongside its seed business. And then there's the 4th one, the one that should make you stop and think: Syngenta. Syngenta was originally a Swiss company, one of the world's leaders in both seeds and pesticides. In 2017, it was bought by ChemChina, a Chinese state-owned enterprise, for $43 billion. The largest foreign acquisition ever made by a Chinese company at that time. So let that land for a second. One of the 4 corporations controlling more than half of the world's commercial seeds is now owned directly by the Chinese government. Syngenta's 2024 revenues exceeded $13 billion. Many people in the agricultural sector still think it's a Swiss company. It is not. Here's where the story gets personal. When you buy a patented seed, you sign a contract. That contract says you can grow 1 crop from that seed. You cannot save seeds from your harvest and replant them. You have to come back and buy again next year. Doing anything else isn't just a breach of contract. In many places, it's a crime. In Kenya, until just months ago, a farmer caught saving and sharing seeds, the same seeds their grandmother saved and her grandmother before that, could face 2 years in prison or a fine of nearly $8,000. In November 2025, the Kenyan High Court struck down that law as unconstitutional, a rare win. But the pressure continues everywhere else. In the United States, Monsanto, now Bayer, sued 145 individual farmers over seed patents. One case, Bowman versus Monsanto, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. A 75-year-old Indiana farmer bought soybeans from a grain elevator, planted them, and was sued. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously against him. The seed belongs to the corporation, even after it leaves their hands. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's written into law, enforced by courts, and backed by trade agreements that now span the entire planet. And this system has done something else that's harder to see, but potentially far more dangerous. We have lost more than 75% of agricultural genetic diversity in the past century. Think about what that means. Thousands of crop varieties, adapted over generations to specific climates, soils, and conditions, gone. Replaced by a handful of corporate varieties, optimized not for resilience, but for yield and profit. When you grow the same variety across millions of acres, a single pest, a single blight, a single new disease can wipe out an entire harvest. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. There is a bunker carved into a frozen mountain on a Norwegian archipelago called Svalbard, inside the Arctic Circle. It holds 1.25 million seed samples from more than 6,000 plant species. It's called the Global Seed Vault. It was built because the people who know most about agriculture were quietly terrified that the genetic diversity of our food supply was disappearing, and they wanted to preserve it before it was gone completely. The vault is a backup for the planet's food. Think about that. We needed a backup because the original was being dismantled, seed by seed, patent by patent, merger by merger, by 4 corporations and the governments that let them grow this powerful. This isn't a story about evil companies. These corporations employ scientists who genuinely believe they're feeding the world. The yields are real. The productivity gains are real. But productivity and security are not the same thing. And here's the question. Nobody in power is asking loudly enough. What happens to the world's food supply when the people who control the seeds decide that profit matters more than access? When a drought, a war, or a supply chain collapse cuts off farmers from the seeds, they can no longer save themselves? What happens when one of those 4 companies, say the one owned by a foreign government, decides that the data it's collecting from millions of farms around the world is strategically valuable? We gave 4 corporations and 1 foreign government control of the foundation of all life on Earth. We didn't vote for it. Most of us didn't even notice it happening. And the window to do something about it is closing, season by season. Every time a farmer signs that contract and opens that bag of seeds they can never own.